Curiosity is where it all begins. Every discovery, every innovation, and every breakthrough starts with one simple question: what if? In this episode of Joyrific, we're diving into what it means to be curious. What does curiosity look like in our daily lives? How can we use it to build better relationships, solve problems, and grow into the best version of ourselves? Curiosity isn't just for kids, it's for all of us. It's what keeps us learning, questioning, and evolving. When we stop being curious, we stop growing. So let's explore together. Let's ask better questions, listen with open minds, and lean into the unknown. Because when we choose curiosity, we open the door to new possibilities, deeper understanding, and unexpected joy. Are you ready to be curious? Let's go. Close the door. Hi, my name is...
I know, but when Mom gets in there and talks to him, it's different.
Did you hit record?
Of course I did.
Can you close the door? My name is Jamie Braithwaite. For those that have never tuned into Joyrific before, this is the Joyrific podcast, and I am here with Garth.
I'm Garth. What if the word was present? Be present? That's not becoming. That's be being.
Becoming? So instead of becoming, be present. But that's very adaptable of you. I'm talking very futuristic.
Okay.
Because become.
Is it adaptable very present tense?
Adaptability is very present tense.
Oh. Am I mostly present tense?
You have it over futuristic and over context. Adaptability is in your top 10.
I still like the idea of wanting 10 in your top 5.
What?
Achievers want.
I actually have 10 traits in my top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have been married for 22 years.
This year it will be 22, yeah. So 21 and a half.
And on the episode I just recorded with Emmy,
Yeah.
we actually talk about the time that I felt most alone. And it was right before we met, when Grandma Jay died. And then you just kept coming over. Every day.
You felt the most alone. And then after we got married, it was the least alone we've ever been. We worked together.
We went to school. We took classes together. We worked together. We lived together in a studio apartment.
Yeah. We were went from, I've never been so alone to, it is a different kind of loneliness because it is I only have one person in my life. And it's not true. You do have more than that. But when you're first married, it does feel like that. This other person is your whole world. And it's exciting and fun. And I like that. And that's good. It's probably not sustainable or healthy.
Well, and they call it the honeymoon stage.
Yeah. And you feel that with your own kids, right? When your kids are becoming too close friends with somebody or dating somebody, you're like, oh, well, you don't want your whole world to be this person because if something happens, but you also want.
Because sometimes it crashes and burns and then it's devastating.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's important to also have that too.
Those are skills that they learn, which I think that's a lot of what this podcast is helping to understand the skills that we have. Okay, tell your fart quote.
Okay. So the original is by Emily Heller, who is a very funny comedian. I like her a lot, but I don't know if she came up with it, but her tweet put it very well. She said, people who hate farts are losers because they have less joy, but the same number of farts. And thinking about life, there are certain things that we have control over, right? There's a certain amount of trial and tribulation that we can influence. But there's also a certain amount that they're going to hit us either way. And it's almost like the more you try to avoid, what's the saying? You often meet destiny on your road to avoid it. The more we try to avoid some of these things, the more they kind of hit us hard. So it's not about trying to avoid all problems. It is about trying to learn and grow and find joy, peace,
harmony,
love, charity. Try to learn and find these good things in the hard things.
Yeah. And we've we have gone through some hard things. I think that this podcast was started in 2011. Since 2011, we took a very long hiatus as we were surviving very hard things. And now we're back recognizing I think a lot about it of I've had 7 5-year-olds. I love 5-year-olds and I can see 5-year-olds, and you can see pretty quickly when you've had that pattern recognition of I I can see this is something that they're going to grow out of, or this is something that is serious that we probably need intervention with. And I have that with newborns, first, second, third, fourth, fifth year kids. Adelaide is 6. And I don't have it with 20-year-olds. We haven't had a 20-year-old yet. And I've been 20, you've been 20, but here we are trying to raise a 20-year-old and be a part of that experience. So the word that you have for this episode is be curious. And let's talk about what that is, what that means in regards to parenting, in regards to being a teenager.
I think it had some popularity with Ted Lasso. There's the episode where he's playing darts, and he talks about people who prejudge, and it just like they made judgments about him. They didn't know who he was. They just made judgments based on what they saw, what they assumed, and it wasn't about him. It was about them. I think that it's a pretty good observation that if we're having a hard time in a relationship with our kids, with our spouse, or whatever, coworkers, can be small things, can be big things. It can be things that we can't avoid, but like they still like cause friction. If we're having a hard time, it doesn't always mean it's about them. We're a little bit like the oyster with the pearl. We want to find whatever that annoying thing is and coat it and make it smooth. But we're not always great at knowing what the source of our problems are. We kind of get more like a spidey sense, right? Like the tingle of like something's off.
Yeah.
And then we start getting into solving mode before we like even really know what it is that we're solving.
I love that so much because what you're describing is your method and my method. And the Joyrific chart was created. I don't do it perfect. If anything, it was created for me to be a better human. And it was because of the skills that you brought to our relationship that really developed this into what it is today. And your top 5 that I love are developer, learner, empathy, belief, and input. With those top 5 strengths, what is it that you lean on as you're being curious?
I mean, it's all of those things, right? The learner, developer, learner, it's just starting from the assumption that I don't know what I'm doing, but I can figure it out. And when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about critical moments that turn into critical conversations, it's that sort of thing of like, well, first of all, I need to know what's going on here. Because if you move straight to, I know what's happening, I need to make this action, we lose out on the opportunity sometimes to understand, but even more important for the child or the other person, for them to understand. Like oftentimes they have even less awareness about what they're thinking and feeling because they haven't had a chance to process.
Yeah.
So being curious often means that you're giving them a chance to think about, what am I struggling with? Why am I struggling? Why did I have that response? Doesn't mean that we're always going to get to it. We're not going to find the cause and effect 100%, but it does give us a second to be reflective and to think through what was happening. The hard part about this is like, we're not trying to encourage kids or other people of like, I need to make sure to protect myself by lying, right? Like I need to tell this person the sort of answer that would make me come across the best in this situation.
And sometimes that happens with kids, especially if you've like painted them in a corner.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you can't fault them for that. Like it's a bit of, they know they're going to get in trouble, and if they're in trouble, things go worse. So they know that they should have tried to avoid getting they should have tried avoid getting into trouble. But the action's already been done. So now they're like on cleanup. They're just like damage control. So like these little, and I mean, this is just about everybody, but like with kids, it's these small PR moments that they're like trying to like, I need to make sure that I'm seen as the hero in this story. So,
well, and Matt Larson says everybody's behavior makes sense in their head.
Yeah. So it's good to like be aware that that's going to happen, and to not like try to catch them in a lie and punish them for it.
So my top 5: futuristic, strategic, achiever, responsibility, and communication.
Those are pretty big.
It's very opposite of the top 5 that you're describing right now. So the skill that you have, I'm learning. I'm continuing to learn. And I want to jump to those conclusions, and I want to, I'm trying to be good. I'm not trying to be a bad person, but it's hard for me to let go sometimes. And it's hard for me to.
And there's a time and a place for all these things, right? When someone is bleeding, you don't stop and like, oh, I wonder how this happened. Like first, let's figure out how to solve the emergency, reduce the amount of damage. And I think that's true of just about everything. Like there is a time where we do need to take an action first. We need to separate. We need to calm down. We need to find something that can help re-engage the amygdala, that can help re-engage the ability to process. Because when the kids are screaming at each other, or somebody is hurt, either emotionally or physically, you're not going to get good answers. You're not going to get insightful anything. They're not going to even remember half of it. It's not going to be real to them.
But what you do is you continue to stay in that space of being curious.
Yeah. I don't do any of these things perfect. But if you were talking about the strengths again, right? Learner, I want to understand these things. Developer, I want them to understand these things. I want them to grow and learn from it. And then input, like I love gathering stories and like having metaphors or quotes by people. I love helping bring in outside things.
Which I actually know that about you, and I love it. Like when I was driving back from Boise, I called you like 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, tell me the thing of the thing of the thing.
What's this word?
Do you remember?
What's this story?
And like within 12 seconds, you had the word, and I was like, okay, thanks. Now I can finish my story.
Yeah, and I didn't need to be there anymore.
No, you were very much a part of it. But
and then empathy, that goes right into the curiosity. I do believe that everyone is trying to do good. I do think at some level we sometimes have been taught that we have to prioritize ourselves over other people, and that good is a finite quantity of stuff. And so we have to make sure that we are seeking out our good and not let anybody else get that away from us.
It's the zero sum.
Yeah, the zero sum fallacy.
Yeah, tell us more about what that is.
But there is some truth to it in some situations, right? Like if you're on a work team, and you're working all year and you're all together trying to do the best you can, at the end of the year, when it comes time to performance reviews and then it turns into compensation, there's a finite amount of stuff to go around. And you are in competition with your coworkers, which is tough, right? You've got this need to collaborate to get the most out of each other. Competition can encourage some improved efforts, but I'm a firm believer, and this is my own bias, that collaboration brings the best long-term results and the best happiness and fulfillment of everybody involved. So having this zero-sum mentality of I have to maximize what I get. And everyone else is going to do the same, so I have to fight them off for it. My happiness is the most important. It's me versus them. I have a really hard time with that.
In a workplace, there's compensation that's connected. In a family environment, there's not necessarily that.
There's a couple of finite things. There's finite attention and time, right? There are some finite resources. There is only a certain amount of money. Most families have to figure out what things they're going to prioritize their money on. And again, the time is the biggest one. When you have X number of kids, seven kids in our case, how much time are you spending with each one of them? And it's not always quantity. Sometimes it's quality. Sometimes it's a specific type of time. Sometimes it's a specific type of sacrifice where it's like, my kid wants to talk to me about Pokemon and I don't really like Pokemon. And that's the only thing they want to talk about. So I want to spend quality time with my kids, but I want to talk about the things that I think they should be caring about, not the things that they care about. All of these things, there are some finites. But it is a fallacy to think that, or to let our kids think that they have to beat out each other, that by knocking somebody else down, that somehow makes you elevated in comparison. Because having that mentality, it's lonely. It's lonely in a family with siblings. It's the sort of thing that leads to not having a relationship with siblings apart from the parents, right? There are
Once
relationships.
you're grown and adults.
Yeah. Well, even as little kids, like, can your kids get along with each other even when you're not in the room? That's a hard thing. That's not something that usually comes naturally for everybody. You definitely have, the second I leave the room, all of a sudden there's a fight that happened that if I was in the room, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you, again, as a dad, help, as a dad of a lot of female teenagers right now, how do you help continue to be curious?
Well, that one's easy because I don't know what it's like to be a female teenager. So it's really easy to be curious about it because, like, I have no idea. I could see that, like, you do have, it does really help to have empathy as a driving force.
Like in my 30s.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to have that skill, but having the desire, having learner, having empathy, having developer, those are really nice for me. There are other ones that are related to that. There are other skills and things that can provide similar behaviors. And tapping into what it is that there's got to be something that curiosity is a part of human nature. So there's some curiosity in you about something. And it needs to be curiosity about people who are not like you. It's so important. If I could figure out a way to, like, help
Bottle it up.
Yeah. Because it's the same sort of thing with, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you find them funny or not, doesn't change the number that you have. It doesn't matter whether you want to understand your kids or not, whether you want to empathize with them or not. They are different than you. They are going to do things that you don't understand. There's no parent who's like, I got my kid 100%. I mean, maybe you're delusional, but I doubt it that it's possible. So if you're going into it knowing I don't know what I'm doing, and that they don't know what they're doing, but I can have a better appreciation for why they do what they do. It's just a good space to be in. Doesn't mean that you're going to be able to control what they do. That's where you hedge into the area where it becomes destructive and it makes you not want to be curious anymore. Because you're like, well, I tried being curious and I didn't get them to do what I wanted. So what's the point?
Yeah.
And it's hard to step back away from that control, because the other part of this is I do honestly believe that I don't know what's best for my kids.
I think that is a very mature sentence. I want you to say that again.
Do you make all your guests say that again?
No.
I know. I don't see you saying that to other people. I honestly don't believe that I know what's best for my kids. I have some ideas. I have some feelings and impressions. I have things that I feel like have helped me in my life. But I am not a child in 2025. I'm not in high school in Idaho Falls. Like the things that are a part of my kids' experience are so incredibly specific to them. that I can't know what's good for them 100%. I can't know what's the best. I can't maximize or optimize to perfection, because I am very imperfect. I don't know what's best for me. I have some good ideas and I have some great experiments to run to try out things, and that can be helpful. But there's even things that I know I'm supposed to do that I don't believe that I'm supposed to do. I don't enjoy running. It would be really good if I ran. But like that feeling that some people get or that drive that they have to do, I don't have it. So every time that I try and do any physical activity, it's not based on I have an internal thing that says it would be good for me. It is 100% based on faith of people that I trust and I believe in. And your kids are going to have some of that too. And that only comes from a relationship of trust, that they trust that you are trying to do what's best for them. And even if they don't see the real reason, they don't understand it 100%, that they trust you enough to try it. And that's a very mature thing. I'm not getting my little kids to brush their teeth just because dad says it would be good for them. There's some bullying that needs to happen to get them to brush their teeth. Not in a negative way, but definitely cajoling and reminding and making it a priority, because it's not coming from them.
Yeah.
And there's going to be that sort of stuff with all of your kids.
So I think a couple of things that I want to talk about out of this discussion is the skills that you learned from your mom, because I think that's a very much...
She's the best.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that and her example in that area.
What she did really well, and some of these things came naturally to her, and some of them are things that she did very intentionally, put a lot of effort into. What's interesting is that she comes from several different family environments. She was adopted at a young age by a single mom, and then again adopted to a different family when she moved here to the States as an adult. So she has an interesting perspective on family dynamics and how they're supposed to work. She didn't have a lot of strong examples in her direct life experience of how to raise small children. And
how to be a mom, how to be a grandma.
And how to be a wife, because again, single mom, how to interact with extended family. There's a lot of stuff there that like she didn't get to see firsthand. But even those who do see it firsthand, we only have one mom. We only have one dad. We only have one set of extended family, one set of siblings.
Well, and you can get step parents and step moms and dads. You can get neighbors. You can get...
But you only have yours.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you only have your own experience. I think that's.
But you also say that, and your mom had the adopted family, the adopted in America family.
But she
had her birth siblings that she found in her 40s.
But she was no longer a child. Those are different stages. And all I'm saying with that, I'm not trying to say that like you should be looking for more or less. There is a reality of like what has happened in the past is what has happened. And you had what you had. So my mom had what she had. But we still can learn from other people's experience. I think that's one of the most eye-opening things about marriage. It's one of the first times that you really realize, because you're now kind of smushing two families together, that families are so different.
Yeah.
That there is no universal, this is the experience of being in a family. Because loving families, very different. Disharmonious families, discordant families, contentious, very different experiences. Even the different types, they're different flavors and different things. And what we assume is safe and all these sort of stuff, they're different for every single person. That's why talks about like love languages and stuff are really nice, because it's applying the idea that there's diversity of showing affection, and of showing displeasure and trying to work through disagreements and stuff. There's so many different ways to go about it. And so we get these kind of internalized mechanisms and tools that we use to do these things. And now we're going and speaking to somebody else who speaks a different language, and we're yelling at them in our language, and they are not hearing it because it doesn't mean the same thing to them.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to my mom. What she did so many things well. She didn't do everything perfect, but she was always trying. Definitely everything was coming from a place of love, and she was always open and wanting to learn and understand how other people were doing things because she felt inexperienced. I was one of the younger kids, so I got a lot of benefit of seeing older siblings maybe do things that I didn't want to do because I saw how it hurt my parents, and I was very much in it, probably empathy, but like just being a people pleaser is part of my nature. But my mom, she made a conscious effort to make sure that she was friends, that she had a relationship with each of her kids, and that as adults, she didn't try to tell them what to do.
You're saying once they turned 18, once they became adults.
It definitely happened before then.
Okay.
If my mom thought that we needed some guidance or direction, she would tell us, right? Like if she felt overwhelmed and needed help with cleaning the house, she would tell us. We would have that. It wouldn't be like she was just doing this free parenting thing where Montessori extremism, let them figure it out on their own. No, she would definitely tell us and instruct us as we were young. But as we got older, my mom, it wasn't that she was less involved. She was less involved in directing. She was more involved. It felt very much more like a coach becoming a spectator or a cheerleader. She was there. She wasn't there to tell us what to do. She was there more often to ask us what we thought we were doing, what we thought we should do, and how it was impacting us. She was curious. She was interested. She wasn't separated or avoiding us. But if there was something that we didn't want to talk about or that was hard for us, she also wouldn't push and fight in there. And I think my dad had a different way to go about it, and I think it's important to have that diversity. But my mom was definitely very safe. I never felt like I could tell anything to my mom that would make her love me any less, or that would fundamentally change the nature of our relationship. I knew that I could change, but that she was still my mom, and she was still interested, and she could, and part of this is just who she is, because she can find interesting topics of conversation to have with anybody. She can love anybody, and that's just who she is. She still has hard times with some people, but for the most part, there isn't anybody I can think of that she couldn't give a hug to and tell them that she loved them and really mean it, and they really feel it.
Yeah. And it's true. And at Taco Tuesday, if you come to Taco Tuesday, you'll get a Granny Annie hug. She just loves everybody.
She loves everybody. But then she's also sometimes overwhelmed and needs to go.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the fact that it doesn't mean that she doesn't like those people. She does. She would love them probably more one-on-one. And she once in a while can even handle sticking around and talking to a few people. But for the most part, once a certain number of people come, she needs to prioritize herself. And that's a thing that she's learned. That's a maturity thing for her. Because I think in the past, she's probably pushed herself to be like, no, I need to love everyone, and my comfort's not important.
Yeah, that self-care aspect.
Yeah, and she's gotten better at that.
So final thoughts for parents that maybe don't have the strengths that you have. What is a way that they can help prioritize that relationship with their friends, neighbors, coworkers, kids?
I don't do these things perfectly, and I think it is important to not discount the skills and the strengths that they have, because we could not have a world full of just developers. We couldn't have a world of just empaths. We wouldn't get much done. But I think it comes down to changing the definition of success. Success in a relationship, when it comes to not the relationships of choice, the relationships of, what's the word there? Because it's not
the relationships that are thrust upon you.
A little bit, right?
Whether it's neighbors that are geographically connected.
Right.
It's children that are genetically or adopted, right, in some aspect, chosen without.
But a responsibility. that has been
stewardship over.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in those relationships, at some point, it's not about changing the person. The success of that relationship cannot be based on their ability to change. Because it's not about that. The relationship has to be based on the two of you coming together.
Which fundamentally goes back to the joyrific chart of only you can move your magnet.
Yeah, it definitely does. But it's more than that too, because it's not moving one person's magnet. It's together we're moving the magnet. The relationship is something built by multiple people, and you get to the kind of the three body problem. But the more people that you have in a family, it's harder to kind of define what that is. And in the workplace, it's the culture. The culture is based on who is there and then what is prioritized. Same sort of thing in the family. But for those who don't feel like they have these things in these areas, first of all, I would say that everyone has the ability to be interested in other people.
To be curious.
To be curious. And it doesn't mean that we have a perfect understanding or the ability to empathize. Even if we're getting into areas where we feel like it's hard for us to understand social cues or the way that people communicate or prioritize things, that's definitely going to happen. But we can still work to try and understand why they love a thing. You don't have to love it, but you can work to understand why they love it. But really, the success of this relationship can't be based on productivity and what you've accomplished as a result.
Oh,
that can be good. That can be a driving
force. Which is my
force.
achiever, right? Like my achiever, my
Right.
futuristic, my strategic, and my responsibility. All of those things, it is very hard for me to step back and say the relationship is not defined by that, because those are my strengths. And that's a learning thing that I've learned from you, and I continue to learn from you.
Well, and we need both, right? Because the idea as well is like, if you spend all your time thinking about the relationship, you actually have a harder time developing it. There is an important part of needing to actually do. If it was up to me, we would have a lot less doing projects together. Just my natural state doesn't do projects. I like to achieve things. I like to accomplish things. I like to make stuff. I like to be creative. But I don't think, left to my own desires or motivations, that I would remodel a kitchen. But once we get started with remodeling the kitchen, I do have ideas and I do have things, and I do enjoy the collaboration. If you don't have hard things that you're working on together, your relationship doesn't actually grow very well. You need to actually, there's something about relationships that they do better on occasion. There's times and seasons for different things, but there are times where you need to not focus on the relationship itself to actually improve the relationship. And that's the same thing with like personal development. You can read all the books you want to about how you're going to improve yourself, but there's a part of it that's like, all right, stop thinking about yourself, go out and do, and then come back and do some reflecting and figure out, I did like this, I didn't like this. But then you got to go back out and do again. If you're spending all your time in your own head, that does make it hard to actually develop. We can't develop ourselves by being selfish. We have to be selfless to develop us and to understand what we really love. And the same thing in the relationship. You kind of have to, at some points, just do things together.
Yeah. With your kids. And that goes into QT time.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes into, that does mean that there are times that you're focusing on what they care about and doing it with them. But there's also an important part of, you do need to teach them to do the things they don't like, and to
be curious,
and to model that behavior of, I don't like cleaning my room. I don't like cleaning my room either.
Yeah.
But
well, and like Taco Tuesday, what's your quote that you say about Taco Tuesdays, like working out?
Oh, the social aspect of it. Yeah, I don't like being social. It's not something that I yearn for, but I know it's good. It's important for me. And that's one of those few lessons that I have learned, that it goes against my nature and that I know is important and is good. And so I put in the effort to do. I don't enjoy seeking out the attention of others. But I do know that it's important to form relationships, and that means that you have to be curious and open and vulnerable with other people. So Taco Tuesday for me is like going to the gym, or it's like how some people treat church, right? Like, we don't always do it because we want to. We do it because I know it's good for me and I like the overall effect that it has on my life. Maybe not this minute right now is something that I want.
And I think young mothers can kind of lean into that too, because sometimes it's not natural. It's clunky to build this relationship.
I would say it's always.
I think that you are way less clunky.
I know, but it's never natural. That's the other part of this. Like, you think about anything. I think this is why I have such a hard time with people talking about successful people talking about their story. Because even when they talk about the hard parts, it still feels smooth. The way they discuss it, it just feels like, but like in the moment, we are all failing. The moments of feeling success in a relationship, I would say, are so few and far between. The majority of the time, it feels like we're making mistakes. So if we're going off of vibes, I don't know. It's tough. You don't want to go off of vibes for relationships because I think that'll lead you to closing yourself off.
Because mostly it's rough. It's negative. It's hard.
And it usually comes as a result of being vulnerable. So it's a lot easier to close yourself off and just like talk about the surface level stuff. Or we just don't get into those topics, or we don't talk about that stuff, or we're not really that sort of, because it's just awkward.
So we have done date night since we moved to Idaho Falls. Can you explain some of the rules of our date night?
It turns out I like rules.
I like breaking them.
Yes. Jamie also likes rules. She loves a system. It doesn't mean that she likes to follow it, but she does like it to be there. Sometimes it's something to jump off of, away from.
So we do it every week, every Thursday. It was actually when we were coaching somebody going through a divorce. I don't know if coaching is the right word, but supporting somebody, helping them, being available. And this person going through the divorce said, I just wish they would have prioritized me in their schedule.
And that wouldn't be like the first time that we heard of date night. I think people have talked. It's pretty
like a thing.
Yeah, but it's pretty common, like in religious environments as well. It's like, hey, you need to make sure that you are dating your spouse.
Yeah. And to extremes, like it could be every Valentine's you go on a date, right? Like that could be a thing.
That is regularly.
And some people do trips that they go on. Like there's all okay. But anyways,
some of our rules. We do a weekly. We try to do a weekly date night. I'd say we probably hit 3 out of 4.
I think it's higher than that.
It might be 5 out of 6, but still, like if we had 2 or 3 in a row that we missed, that would be unusual, and that would feel off.
Yeah. And we feel it. I think when we've had those times, we do feel it. I think I'm more irritable. I think that I am super judgy, and like everything is scratchy between you and I.
What's interesting is even if date night, having it or not having it, is the cause of that, it becomes something that you can attach and you can do something about.
Yeah, it's true.
It's back to that, like we're good at knowing there is a problem. We're not always great at knowing why. If we haven't had date night in a few weeks and things feel like higher friction or scratchier, you're like, well, that's probably the date night.
Yeah.
And then we go on a date night, and did it fix it or not? I don't know, but we did something.
And was it like crazy impactful?
Probably not.
Typically not.
Yeah, you don't need that sort of pressure. Date night themselves, the main requirements, and this is because it's specific to us, we don't run errands. And that's because we just are very busy people, and there's a lot of tasks to accomplish. And we do like to achieve and like to be productive. We don't like, there's two different things. No, because right? Jamie likes to be productive and achieve. And I like some of that too. I really don't like forgetting, missing something. Like I don't like missing an opportunity. I like to be on top of things, even though I'm not, but I like to. So and
I like to optimize. So if we're on the west side of town and the thing is there, like we can just swing by and we have decided pretty early that's not, because just the swing by the thing, it always turns into a thing. Yeah. And then it's not date night.
And if all of a sudden you're swinging by doing this one thing, and then you see somebody that you know, and then you're talking to them, and then, oh, that reminds me of I need to accomplish. It's very easy to slip into.
Snowballs.
It's not about you two. That doesn't mean that you can't do like doubles dates, because
Yeah.
on occasion that's also really nice, is to
I think it's like
listen to other.
1 in 25 that we do a double.
And that can be different for different people. Like, what is the right cadence on that? Because it is nice to hear other. Honestly, when you both work from home and you are doing a lot of the same activities, we run out of stories. We don't have a lot to talk about with each other that we haven't already kind of talked about.
Yeah.
And it's always surprising when we're like, I didn't know any of that was happening. Sometimes there are things that slip through the cracks, and we're like, I wasn't even aware that
Yeah.
occurred. But yeah, it's not about even achieving anything. The goal of date night is to spend time alone. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
And it doesn't end in sex every time, ever, right? Like that's not part of
an
it.
expectation or a requirement.
It doesn't mean fancy meals.
Yeah, and we have to be aware that like we're not always going to have the money for date night. So does that mean we pack lunches and we leave somewhere to go get away from it? That definitely has meant we've made something and eaten it in a room away from our children because we couldn't get a babysitter. And so we couldn't afford to do date night away from the house, or we were dealing with a child who was dealing with health complications that made it very difficult to get somebody else to babysit our kid. We didn't feel comfortable with other people.
And we've had newborns on top of the complications.
And when you have a newborn, you're tethered to the newborn if you're nursing, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're not nursing, feeding needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're getting enough sleep to have your mind in a good place. But we worked through it. We did our best to carve out time on a regular basis. And that's not something that Jamie does naturally, as far as like, I have this weekly rock in my stream of life that is always there. Because part of the optimizing is you're always looking to find the best place to put things. And so that means you can change a lot. But when it comes to date night, once you've decided that that's the only time that happens, there is a structure and a benefit that comes out of having that constraint.
I think there's also an active force to destroy that constraint.
Yeah. Again, part of it might just be optimizing, but part of it is also nobody else has that constraint. They have other things that are going on. Yeah. We have found that we really like Thursday for our date night because going out on Friday is awful. There's so many other people who are doing the same thing. Yeah. Or other things are going on. So for us, it has worked out well to do Thursday.
The kids, we kind of hang out at our house. It kind of turns into the hangout place on Friday.
Taco Tuesday tends to be on Tuesdays, but there's also church activities that tend to be on Tuesdays. Mondays tend to be a family night, or historically has been tried to be.
And it's like the kickoff of the week. Like we've
kind
just
of exhausted.
did the weekend. Like it's just not. Yeah.
So again, different people are going to find different things that help. We do live in a small town that has a finite set of choices for dinners. And so it's very easy to, the success metric can't be, I want to go eat good food. Because I can cook better food than a lot of places that we go to eat. Yeah. That's not the goal. We have gotten it to work with different diets that we've had at different times. And as our tastes changed, we've been able to make it work. But it does help to tether it to an activity that we have to do anyway. We have to eat.
I think, yes, it's true. I think also we have established it with our children that we are doing date night, that we don't like sneak off in the night. We
had in the past, like, hey, maybe don't make it a big deal because this kid's going to have a hard time with parents leaving. But
the kids know, and they have built this relationship back to that thing of building a relationship in a situation that you don't have any choice over these people. That's part of date night too, is they do that. And Granny Annie comes over, they can watch a movie together, which we don't actually need Granny Annie to come over. We have kids that are old enough to watch themselves. At one point we did need the Granny Annie action of it, but it's also opportunity for them to build a relationship.
Yeah, and it's tethering something. It is a bit of optimizing, but it's tethering something that we want to have happen with something that's going to happen anyway. We know we're going to do date night. That's a great time for Granny to come over. But again, she's not babysitting them. She often is gone by the time we get home. It doesn't have to be long term. Doesn't even have enough time usually to even finish a movie. But it helps us because it gives us a rock to build around. So we get to tell the kids, hey, you're in charge of your own dinner for Thursday night. They're not really in charge of it for themselves because we know
they
that,
do something in the air fryer or
right. They'll make corn dogs. They'll make themselves a meal. But we start like talking about it at 4:00 because we know we want to go on date night. And part of what's going to make that successful is if we make sure our kids have been able to find food and eat.
And when we had little kids, I mean, it overwhelmed Granny.
Oh, yeah.
Unless we had them bathed in pajamas, had already been fed, and they were all sitting on the couch. So when Granny walked in, they were sitting on the couch and we could hit play on the movie.
Yeah.
So there are, which, I mean, that kind of slips because we're chaos and things. But I think that there's...
It helped give us a reason to have our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't always work out.
And there were times where, like, that was the only thing I looked forward to.
It was the only day that, like, by 6:00 we had accomplished those things. It wasn't as if we couldn't accomplish those things any other day, but for some reason, if you don't have that thing, So
to wrap up, thank you. I love you. In conclusion, Garth, thank you for being curious. Thank you for being...
Thanks for asking such good questions. You turned what was going to be just sitting around for a couple of seconds into a really good... You're really good. And you know how to get people to talk about stuff. And it wasn't about one way's better than the other. But you were making sure to hit the strengths and the things that I do feel comfortable and confident in. So thank you. You did a good job.
I love you.
Amen. I love you too.
Wow, this has been such a fun conversation. Garth's example and perspective always reminds me to stop and think before I jump headfirst into action. He reminds me that the relationship is most important. I love how curiosity leads us to ask better questions, build stronger relationships, and see the world with fresh eyes. And speaking of curiosity, if you've ever been curious about the real estate market, whether it's buying, selling, or investing, or just wondering what's happening in your neighborhood, I'd love to chat. Real estate isn't just about transactions. It's also about building relationships, finding the right place to put down roots to build family memories and great communities. If you're thinking about making a move, or even if you're just curious, let's have a conversation. No pressure, no obligations, just good information and honest guidance. You can reach me anytime at 208-254-2226 to schedule a consultation. And if you're local, don't forget, we'd love to meet you at Taco Tuesday. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. Thanks for being part of the Joyrific community.